It is time to get started. So perfect. Well, thank you all for coming. I think it's, I wanted to start off with, this is sort of an interesting topic, pricing property. And so I wanted to ask all of you what you're hoping to take away from today so that you can use it to help your business. What are you hoping to learn today? Anybody can pop in. Becky.
I just kind of wanted to sit in and hear what you got to say. I feel like I price very well, but I'm always open to learning. So, I just want to hear if there's anything new that I don't know.
Well, very good. I appreciate that. Pricing, well, you've been doing this a long time, and so you've had a lot of success at pricing things that sell. I'm sure you're going to hear things a little bit different from the thought process that I have today, and hopefully it's helpful. Anybody else have anything that they're trying to get as a takeaway from today?
Well, Mark, I think it's just fine tuning. Got the basics, I believe, but I'd like to fine tune, see what you got to say.
Okay, well, very good. Anybody else?
Yes, I'm all about the basics.
All about the basics. Okay. Good.
Hey, Mark.
Yes, Michael.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get how to explain to clients that want to list a property that we're not in the same market as we were a couple of years ago. And it's not, the COVID days. And they think they're going to get way more than they should for their home. And it's hard to explain to them, especially when you ask them to do like a price reduction, how to word that. So,
okay.
Great point.
Well, very good. And I think that you're going to learn, or you're going to get information that will help you with all of those things. Fine tuning some of the thought processes that we have. I think it's also really important to understand something that I call value. Understanding what value is, which is a little bit different from pricing, and also to give you guys some ideas and some techniques on how to communicate your knowledge of the marketplace to the clients that you're working with, because it's not enough to know what the right price is, because we have a decision maker, which is the buyer or seller that we're dealing with. And so what's really the critical end part of the conversation is, how do you get the buyer and seller to come to the same conclusion that you're making it as recommendations in pricing. So let's go through some thoughts. I'm hoping that you take some notes on this, and bear with me, because it may not be the presentation that you're expecting, but I think you're going to find the information helpful as we get through it. Okay. So these are things that I have developed over the last 38 years, and I say to people all the time, pricing property in Big Bear is an art, and it's not a science. It's a very, very diverse market, where we have old houses next to new houses. We have big houses next to small ones. The land value, can double or even triple in the same block, depending on how much view and, what the view is and what the size is and how much frontage. The best example that I, can give you of that is that if you're down on Lakeview, a lakefront lot might be $1.3 million. The lot across the street might be 300,000. And if you go 2 blocks inland, which is still within a quarter mile, the lot might be $100,000. So there's just a lot of diversity within our market that makes using comparables for pricing very, very difficult. Would you guys all agree to that?
Yes.
It is difficult. And that's why I think you guys are here today, is because pricing is difficult. So what I'm going to share with you as we go through it is, to talk about the factors that create value. Because when you know what the value is, then it's easier to put a price tag on it when you understand what the value is in the marketplace, okay? When we're talking with sellers and trying to help them to identify a price, we will use comparable listings. We will use closed sales. I have used replacement cost over the years. And basically that pitches that I say to the seller is that, hey, if you bought your lot today for 100,000, because that's what they are in the marketplace, and you built a brand new home on your lot at the current going rate of $300 or $350 a square foot for that kind of quality, it would cost you $700,000 to replace it new. And so that's sort of a script and a dialogue that I have with people when I'm trying to help them identify the correct price. Okay, and we'll go back and we'll go into that a little bit more in detail later. The last thing that I talk with people about is value or buyer appeal, which is very, very elusive. And so I want to make this point really, really important. It's important to make this point to you is that engineers do not like it when you say, hey, this house is nicer than yours. They'll talk about square footage, they will talk about all kinds of numbers and everything. And they will talk about things that are not intangible. And it's these intangibles that I want to talk about that create value. And the example that I'm going to give you is that if you were to buy a 4-door sedan, you were going to buy a Kia that was a 4-door sedan. And let's say that it cost you $25,000, right? It's got 4 doors, it's got an engine, it's got 4 tires. It gets you from point A to point B, and it sells for $25,000. And then you take a Mercedes sedan that has 4 doors, 4 tires, an engine, and gets you from point A to point B, but it sells for $85,000. Why the difference in the price? Anybody can share with me why the difference in the price?
Workmanship, quality.
Exactly.
Bells and whistles.
Bells
The
and
options. It's the options it has.
It's all of the options. Awesome. So, that's an analogy that I use with sellers because they do understand that, a 4-door Kia and a 4-door Mercedes are basically the same product when you start looking at, tires and engines and doors and that kind of thing. But that doesn't mean that they have the same value. The value is different. And it's those other factors that we need to be looking at when we are pricing property in Big Bear and explaining to our clients to help them price the property appropriately in order to sell it when they're a seller and to justify somebody's asking price in the eyes of a buyer when they're looking at properties as well. Okay. And I call a lot of these things that are sort of intangible buyer appeal. Okay, so it's important, especially, to remember some of the basics of selling, that people buy for their reasons, they sell for their reasons, not ours. So it's really important to have an in-depth discussion with our client and understand, particularly with buyers, what is important to them. We need to understand what their thought process is in order to be successful. And so we're going to talk about how questions and, creating, a good conversation with them will help you identify what the critical factors are for the buyer that you're working with. Buyers determine value by comparison shopping. They're comparing all of the homes together, against each other with what is important to them. But sellers, on the other hand, will often set their list price based on comparable properties that they've never seen. They don't know anything about the features and benefits of the homes that they're using for comparables, right? So it's our job to help them think clearly and help them to make appropriate comparisons. And, this process is something that we can learn and develop and refine so that we can get better with both our buyers and sellers, okay? The most common thing that we hear of from our clients is price per square footage. Would you guys agree? I hear people talk about, well, that one's 500 a square foot, and that one's 334 and all of that. And, and I want to share with you that the price per square foot really doesn't have anything to do with the value of a particular property. It's almost meaningless. The price per square foot numbers that you're hearing people talk about, the individual homes, one might be 334 and one might be 550 and one might be 750. It's the reason for the differences in there is that what really creates value. And when you start looking at, the average in Big Bear City is $527 a square foot, that is a moving average of all of the homes in the area. The old decrepit cabins, historical things, brand new construction, lakefront houses, they take an average of all of the market. And so what you get with a price per square foot kind of movement is it gives you an overall health of the entire market. It really doesn't help you do anything specifically with a house. Now, I want to make sure that everybody understands that point clearly, and I think you guys will all agree with it. And yet we still find ourselves having discussions with our buyers and sellers a lot about price per square foot, right? So I want to make this comment to you is you will never, ever have an effective sales call with either a buyer or seller if you're arguing about the price per square foot. You can't win because it's not something that's real. Those are just numbers. Value is an entirely different conversation, and it is about different factors. So another interesting sales point is that people buy on emotion and justify with facts. Okay. And this is particularly important when you're talking with a buyer. So let's talk about what some of these factors are. I know that, some of you that have gone on a tour with me, I will talk to people about, when I'm training them about what is important in the Big Bear market. And there are several things that are differentiators that the overall public in general kind of looks at. One of the things that they talk about is location. They want to know if they're going to be close to the lake, whether they're close to a ski area, whether they're close to a park. I mean, there are factors that are important to each buyer, and sometimes they're very, very different. Sometimes a buyer's preferred location is to be very, very remote and very quiet. Other times it is to be close into town because of rental activity. So sometimes it's different locations that are important to them. When you find that out with a buyer, you can ask them to rate the location based on, this particular property versus that one. So an example of that would be if a buyer says, hey, I want to be remote. And so you show them something that is up on Alameda that's up at the top of Moon Ridge, and it's quiet and peaceful. And you say, this one's got a lot of privacy and is pretty remote. What would you grade that on a scale of 1 to 10? That makes sense? And then you might show them something on Yosemite that's got a lot of houses that are closer by each other. Okay. And ask them to rate that on a scale of 1 to 10. And then ask them to compare the house on Yosemite versus the one on Alameda. Does that make sense? So these are factors that people are going to be differentiating. So when I go on tour with people, I will say, hey, let's take a look at the accessibility of this particular house. The accessibility could be how long it takes to get to the property when you come into town. Something that's in Fox Farm might be 2 minutes off of the boulevard. I would say that's pretty good access from a time standpoint. If you're up at the top of Alameda and the top of Moon Ridge and it takes you 10 minutes to go up windy roads to get there, that accessibility might be a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10 for a buyer. You guys follow me with that? Okay. The other thing that we talk about accessibility is the driveways. If you have a level driveway, the access for most people, they're going to say that's good access getting into it. If you have a steep driveway going in and out of a property, whether it's up or down, that is going to make the access lesser. Okay. So when we are out judging the houses that we're looking at, we want to be looking at privacy, the accessibility of the driveway, how far is it to get there? Is it something that's convenient for people coming into town? Those are features that people are going to be rating when they're trying to identify value. Some other things, quality of construction. We might have a property that has quartz countertops and might have wood floors, but there's gaps in the corners, and there's warped floors because they installed them incorrectly. So a lot of times you can rate on a scale of 1 to 10 what the quality of the construction, the fit and finish is of the materials. You can have high quality and have drywall if it's done well. For example, if you're looking at drywall and you can see all of the seams and you can see all the tape and the tape is peeling, That would not necessarily be, the materials that you're comparing, but it would be the fit and finish. It would be the quality of the workmanship. Then you can also look at the quality of materials. We have Formica countertops. We have ceramic tile that was pretty popular in the 80s. We have quartzite, which is, I think, one of the top things that they're putting into homes now. And so when you're evaluating the comparables, now remember, we're talking about square foot, price per square foot. A house that has Formica is going to be valued differently than something with ceramic tile, and something with ceramic tile is going to be valued different than something with quartzite. Does that make sense? Everybody get that? Okay. Some things also to rate would be the floor plan. Is it something that's functional? Is it something that is open? You have an open living, kitchen, dining room area. I would say that the majority of the people that are looking in Big Bear today value an open living, kitchen, dining room area. If you go into a cabin that was built in the 50s, you see a lot of times the rooms are really small, and they have walls all around them. They're not opened up. And then there's things that we just see that are odd, right? We see a bedroom that goes into another bedroom, that goes into a bathroom, that goes into another bedroom. We've all run into some of those houses where they just sort of had add-ons after add-ons, and the floor plans are odd. Or you have a hallway and you have this bedroom that's off of it that's, maybe 5 feet wide. It's just enough for a single bed, and you could walk around it, and they're calling it a bedroom. That would be an odd floor plan. But people, especially buyers, when they're creating value or looking for something, are going to be looking at these things. John calls it a built more because they keep building more. That's true. Okay. So we talked about floor plan. We also talk about view. A lot of times you will see an advertisement for a house that says it has a lake view. And then when you get out there, the only thing you can see in the lake view is if you're on your tippy toes on the right corner of the deck, you can see a little bit of blue. In the wintertime when all the leaves are gone, but in the summertime when the leaves are out, you can't see it. So on a scale of 1 to 10, we rate the quality of the view. And so an example of that would be is that, if you can see the lake, but you have to do it on tippy toes, or you have to look out, a second story window to see it, that might be a 1 or a 2 view. If you have maybe a 45-degree angle of the view, but you see other rooftops in it, or you see utility lines in it, that might be a view that you would give a 4 or 5 on a scale of 1 to 10. If you have 180-degree view, but you have lines in it, you might call that a 7 or an 8 view. And then if you have nothing that is obstructing the view, if all you see is treetops in your view of the lake, you might call that a 10 view. Okay, so you want to rate these things. You want to be thinking of these things as you're going through the houses, when you're previewing property and when you're looking at them. You should be judging all of the properties based on your experience of working with other buyers in the market. Does that make sense? Is there any questions on where I've gone with this so far? Don't see any questions. Okay. Don't hesitate to pop in. Okay. Some of the things also that people are looking for is the setting. Okay. One of the stories that I like to share, back in 1986, when I moved to Big Bear, I moved out into Shea Meadows, and I loved the area. I mean, you were looking at this open meadow across from my house, and there were horses out there, and there was grass growing, and there were mountains on the other side of it. And I remember once driving through the area where my house was with a buyer, and they said, we don't like this area. And I said, why? And they says, it doesn't feel like the mountains. And I was pretty early on in my sales career. And I said, well, that's stupid. Look at this beautiful meadow. I'm thinking it to myself. I didn't say it. I mean, that's stupid. I mean, look, this is the mountains. You got the meadow there. You got the horses out there. This is the mountains. And they said, no, we don't like it. And so I drove them into Big Bear City, I think into Sherwood or Sugarloaf Boulevard area or Pinewood Estates or somewhere in there where there were a lot of trees. And they go, yeah, this feels like the mountains, because they like being around pine trees. Okay. So, it's important to sort of understand the collective desire of what the overall market is looking for, which I can guarantee you is most people are looking for pine trees. They're looking for that setting where you're looking at the house. They see a house that, is not overgrown, but has a lot of pine trees around it. That's what the majority of people are looking for when they come to Big Bear. I'm hoping you guys all agree with that. Other factors determining value, particularly for people that are planning to do short-term rental, is, what can they expect from income? And that will create value in their eyes. Okay, if it's an area, that is conducive to a lot of rentals, Moon Ridge, around the ski areas, that has 2 baths, is something that's going to rent very often. Especially if it has a good history, that will create value in the eyes of the buyer as well. Okay, let's see. Okay, some other factors that determine value: deferred maintenance. So when you walk into a house that that has a lot of work to it, you're going to start making adjustments off of that. What is it going to take to bring this up to good condition? There's some things that that change with the age of the structure. And it's not necessarily always the age of the structure. In 1980, that's the cutoff date when they started putting dual pane windows and upgraded insulation in properties in Big Bear. And so when we pull comparables, or at least when we used to pull comparables, a lot of times the comps would be, there'd be a big drastic change between 1979 and 1980 because of the dual pane windows. And that's still true about things that happened in 1992. They upgraded the quality of the workmanship for houses with upgraded earthquake requirements. You can't necessarily see them, but there is a big change in the pricing for things that were built before 1992 and after. And now today we have things like fire resistant construction with the decks. The soffits are closed in, and we have sprinklers installed in a lot of the new construction. And some of them even have solar panels. So the age of the construction, it isn't necessarily just the age of what's there, but it's also what those new requirements are that make a difference. Everybody follow that? Okay. So if you see a house that was built in 1975, but it has dual pane windows, the comp from 1982 is probably going to be just as valid as something from 1978 that has dual pane windows, if they've upgraded, if they've brought something up to 1980 standards. You guys follow that? Okay. The utilities, are they underground or overground? That is overhead. That's going to change the value. South facing versus east facing versus north facing. Who knows what's significant about an east facing house versus a north facing house?
The snow melts faster.
Exactly. So in the wintertime, the sun is on the north side, and so something that is facing north is going to have shade on the front of the house, and the snow is not going to melt. And so when you're trying to go in the driveway, you got to shovel 4 feet of snow out of there, right? But if you're over on the North Shore, if you're over in Whispering Forest, it gets that snow or that sunlight all the time, that snow is going to melt. Now, let me ask you a question. Which is more valuable, north facing or south facing?
South.
Becky said south. Okay. South. Are you sure?
Because
it depends. There's so many other factors that go with it, like the location itself. And
well, I'm gonna stick with the question just about north versus south facing. Which one is more? And Becky says south facing is better.
I say south.
South.
Because it's going to get sun all winter long, so the snow is going to melt. Especially if you're on a steeper driveway, then it's really going. And that's a selling point that I share with most of my clients as well.
Okay. So that's, and I think that's an interesting response, and I agree with you to an extent. But the real answer is, what does your buyer think? Okay. And here's why. Okay. is if my buyer is from Newport Beach and my buyer from Newport Beach loves the snow, and I tell them, hey, you know, this is south facing and the snow is going to melt a lot faster, they may not like that. They may want their kids playing in the snow in their front yard. Okay, so let's not assume that the feature and benefit that we think is valuable is going to be more valuable to the buyer. A lot of the times it's going to relate to the buyer. Now, if somebody is a full-time resident, it's pretty likely that they're going to like something that's east facing or south facing because they're not going to want to shovel all that snow all winter long. That makes sense? I think it's important to make that point. We're judging the features and benefits of the houses in order to determine value. But the value is often created by the buyer themselves, what they think is important. If they think having fast snow removal in the winter is valuable, then that is valuable to them, and we want to enforce that, or we want to enhance that idea. But if they don't value that, it's not so good. Okay. I'll give you a really good example, and then we'll move on from this, is that, you know, if somebody is a full-time homeowner in Big Bear and they have young kids, they might want to be close to the park, or they want to be close to schools. But 80% of our buyers are not full-time residents with young kids, right? The majority of them are vacation home people. Some of them have kids and some of them don't. So we don't know what some of these features and benefits are going to mean to each particular client. Why is this important? Okay, so you go out and you talk with a seller, and the seller, and I'll give you a really good example. House down on Eagle Drive that backs to the park. Do you think that's a pro or a con? Becky said con. I can read lips.
It depends on
Yeah, it depends on the buyer and what they're looking for.
The buyer, okay. And so when you're pricing property, okay, when you're talking with a seller, I'm going to be looking at the advice that I'm going to give my seller is, you know, what does the typical buyer say? Okay, what does the typical buyer say? I would suggest to you that 9 out of 10 buyers do not want the noise and the activity at that park. 9 out of 10 buyers would not want the activity at that park, okay? And when I talked with the seller, you know, I'm thinking of a specific listing, he was absolutely enamored that he had the park there. You know, he could sit out there and he could watch the soccer games on weekends, and the softball games, and the birthday parties and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, that's the last thing I want to do all weekend, is listen to all that noise. And that's the last thing most people want to see, you know, when they're looking out of their structure, you know, in the winter or the summer. Okay, so a lot of it depends. These features and benefits really make a difference depending on who your buyer is. But when we're pricing property, we have to know what the majority of our market is. And the majority of our market wants peace and quiet. The majority of our market wants a lot of pine trees. The majority of our market wants to have an open floor plan. The majority of our market wants cathedral ceilings, right?
And a fireplace. It seems like a tough sell to sell a house with no fireplace.
Okay. So I know that I'm going, you know, I'm sharing a lot of different things in sort of seemingly all over the place with where we're at so far. But I'm going to bring it all together when we start talking about pricing, because I think you guys are mostly here to figure out how to talk with your sellers about pricing. That's why I think most of you are here, okay? The factors that determine value are the same for both buyers and sellers. However, the conversations we have with buyers and sellers are very, very different. With buyers, the buyers only care about themselves. They don't care what the entire market thinks value is. They care about them. If they think being close to a park is valuable and important, then that's important to them. If they want privacy and they want to look at the national forest, and that they don't care that, you know, most people don't want that, or most people can't afford that. They only care about themselves. When you're talking with the seller, you have to be thinking more about what the majority of the market is looking for. And we're going to get to that when we start coming to the comparables. Okay. Your job with a buyer is to understand what's valuable to them and then focus on those features and benefits. Your purpose with the sellers to help them understand their home in the eyes of the buyers, a collective pool of them, which is all of them. Okay. So as we go through, we talk about selling is not telling. That's one of, the things that you guys have heard me talk about before. It's asking a series of questions that help the client discover and help them make decisions that are going to help you lead to a deal. Okay. So we consider the factors that create value, and we ask the client what they think about each one. That's particularly with a buyer, rate them on a scale of 1 to 10, compare the homes. Do you like this house on Eagle better? Do you like this one over on Night better? The buyers get to choose that. That's not about price, but it's helping them decide what they want to buy. Where it comes into value is when we start getting into the comparables here. And it's going to be mostly the same when we're talking with buyers as when we're talking with sellers. Okay. Again, selling is not telling, it's asking a series of questions. So one of the attachments that you guys have today is the Mike Ferry script. Okay. And so I'm going to sort of go through it, and I think I'm going to ask Michael, are you still there?
Yeah, my Zoom's acting up a little bit, but I can still hear you. I'm still hearing you.
Can you hear me? Why don't you leave yourself unmuted, because I want you to role play with me.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to go through this script, and I'm going to use I'm going to unshare this, and I'm going to show you guys the comparables. So let's go to that. Ba-ba-bum.
You're doing a good job in that role play, Michael.
Well, right now he's not doing anything, but okay. So I want to make sure you guys can see
Thanks, Bill.
this screen. Can you guys see the 114 East Meadow, or are you seeing something different?
No, we don't see your screen at all.
Okay, so
I just see videos.
what do you guys see?
You
Just
Just
you.
our
Bottom green
screen.
tiles.
Okay. So what the heck is going on here? I'm trying to.
Dana, you look great. Did you get your makeup done?
Okay.
Look beautiful.
I am not finding out. I'm sort of lost in trying to share my screen, and it's not, and I can't get myself out of it.
Which one do you want, Mark?
I'm trying to share my screen and show the subject property.
Is that the one that's 6 pages or the one that's 1 page that you sent me?
It's 114 East Meadow. And I have never been in a position.
Okay. Let me see if I can share it, Mark.
Okay.
I deliver Meals on Wheels to that house.
Do you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so you guys can all see that, it's really weird as I've got myself in a strange place with this Zoom thing. So, Michael, this is your home, okay? This is your home, and, so we're going to role play through this. So we've walked through your house, and you have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, It's 1,448 square feet with a 2-car garage. It was built in 1977. It has been remodeled. It has, I want to say on a scale of 1 to 10, it's got about 7 for quality, but it has nice materials. They've put in a quartz type of counter. They've got hardwood floors. It looks nice, but it's not grade A quality construction. It's just, it's sort of a Chevy kind of quality. Does that make sense, Michael?
Yes.
Okay. And I know that you love your home. Now, Nicole, will you share the 6-page, all of the comparable properties? And so I'm going to role play with you, Michael, as we get there, because I'm going to have this conversation with you about determining value.
Yeah.
Okay. There we go. Okay. So Michael, you know, I've prepared what we call a comparative market analysis, and the purpose of it is to determine value in the eyes of the buyer. Okay. Do you know how buyers determine value, Michael?
I know with them comparing different houses that you're showing me, obviously it looks like they'll have 2-car garages. What upgrades they have inside, you can't really see that on the comparables, but then also the square footage and the lot size. I think the lot size is important if they decide to add on to the property or put an ADU on there.
Okay. Well, you know, before we go into that, let's talk about how buyers determine value. Do you know how they determine value?
A lot of times I think they just go off the what they think is the square footage. They think it's good, and then also the location, what amenities they're looking for, and if they're looking to, if they want it to be an investment property or just a vacation home.
Well, yeah, and that makes sense. You know, Michael, that's exactly what they do. They comparison shop, meaning they compare the features and the benefits of your home versus the features and the benefits of the other homes that are currently for sale, as well as the ones that have recently sold. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. You know, well, let me give you an example. Let's say that you were out to buy, a brand new truck, and you went to the Ford dealership and they had this brand new truck on the lot, and F-150, and the cost of it was $30,000. And being a prudent shopper, Michael, you decided you'd go, take a look at a couple of other dealerships, and you found another dealership down the road that had exactly the same truck for $30,000, but this one had fancy upgraded rims and had a premium sound system. Which one would be a better value?
The one with the premium sound system and the upgraded wheels.
Right. Can you tell me why you say that?
Well, it's at value because the stock vehicle doesn't have that, and it adds value to it. It wouldn't help with the resale down the road. I know from this, but
Yeah.
yes, it adds value to the home. I mean, to the vehicle.
Exactly. So what happens, Michael, is that, when you have more features and benefits for the same price, it creates more value. It's exactly like that. It's exactly like that for most people. But let me ask you this question. Let's say that you were just about ready to write up this truck for $30,000 with the premium stuff, and the first dealer called you back and said, hey, my sales manager just said that if you come back and buy this car today, we'll sell you this truck for $24,500, but it has to be today. Which one would be a better value then?
It depends on how much that sound system and the wheels and tires cost, I guess.
Okay. Well, let's say for argument's sake that the rims, the rims were an extra $1,000 and the premium sound was $1,500. Which one would be a better value there?
The better value, I mean, you can add on, you're gonna save the 6, so you would go with the first one.
Okay. And I agree with you. And the reason is that for the savings of $5,500, you could spend that money and put in the sound system that you wanted, or you could put on the new wheels you wanted if you wanted to. And if you didn't want any of those upgrades, you would just have a better deal at 24.5. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So in order to create value in the eyes of a buyer, you can either do one thing. You can even have the lowest price, or you can have the same price with more features and benefits. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so let's take a look at your home, okay, and compare it to these other homes, okay? This one here is just like yours in several respects. You know, how many bedrooms does it have?
3 bedrooms.
Two, and that's just like yours, isn't it?
I believe so. I can't see my house right now on the
Yeah,
screen.
yours is 3
But I know
bedrooms.
it has the same amount of bedrooms.
Yeah. Yours is a little bit older than this one. This
I
one
should know. I should know what my house has because I live there, but for some reason I'm going to blank. So
That's okay. Okay, and this one is a little bit newer than yours. They're about the same size, right? Yep. Yep. And it has 2-car garage just like yours, right?
yes,
Okay. Michael, have you seen this home? Do you know where this neighborhood is? Have you seen this home?
I do know that it is. I believe I've driven by that home before. Yes.
Okay, have you been inside it before?
No.
Remembering that you're a seller and not a real estate agent. Okay, just a reminder on that. Okay. You know,
Oh
Michael,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Michael, I've been
Not bad. Yeah.
Okay. So this home is, I can't control the screen. Can you go down a little bit, Nicole, on it? Okay. This home is not as good as yours. It doesn't have as much appeal as yours. It hasn't been upgraded like yours. It's got the old, original ceramic tile from the 1980s. I mean, it's nice, but it's not upgraded like yours. So your home is a little bit better than this. And this one is, how much are they asking? Or how much? Yeah, how much are they asking? Michael?
I can't. I see the comparables. What is my problem on the left? I don't see my listing.
Well, your home. This is the comparable. That's the comparable, and they're asking 380, but your house is better than that.
But what I was saying is, the screen with my listing and then all the details is not there, so I can't tell you that right now.
Okay. Well, let me guide you through it, Michael, because normally, when I'm doing a listing presentation or you're doing a listing presentation, the seller is going to know the details of their home. Okay.
Of course, yes.
And so in the majority of the time, and this is important for all of you to recognize, the majority of the time when you ask a seller, have you been, do you know where this neighborhood is? Do you know this home? Do you know this neighborhood? Sometimes they will say yes, they know the neighborhood. Most of the times they'll say they sort of know where it's at. But when you ask them, have you been in this home? The answer is going to be, what do you think? It's going to be no. Okay. That's an important question to be doing when you're pricing property with your sellers, is to ask them if they have been in the home. And the answer, it's going to be no. That's called a rhetorical question. Somebody chime in with why you think I would ask that question.
Because you can follow up with the fact that you have and the features that it has.
Yes. Okay. So if you are supposed to be the expert in the marketplace, should your seller be arguing with you about value? Probably not, huh? They shouldn't be, but they do, right? And so one of the ways that you can sort of take control of the conversation is to ask them this question. You know, do you know this neighborhood? Yes, I sort of know where that's at. And so, yeah, I know, I've been in that area before. Have you been in this home? No, I haven't. Well, I have been in this home, you know, and I want to share with you, you know, is that it has, you know, 1980s tile. It's got original carpet in good condition. It's not as good as your house, and they're asking 380,000 for it. So we know your house is better than that. Okay, so I've made a comparison. Make sense? So let's talk about the next one.
Yes.
Okay, so the next one here is at 400 San Martin Drive. Do you know that neighborhood, Michael?
Yes.
Okay. And so basically the Mike Ferry script that's in front of you, I'm asking how many bedrooms does it have? And Mike will say 3. And I would say, how many baths does it have? And he'd say 2. And what's the square feet? Oh, it's 1328. That's just like my house. Have you seen this home? No, I haven't seen this home. It has a 2-car garage just like yours. Okay. This home, Michael, is almost exactly like yours. This is almost exactly like yours. It was built a little bit newer in 1980, but it's been upgraded and remodeled just like yours. And how much are they asking, Michael? They're asking $449,500.
449, yeah.
Okay, that's what they're asking for. Okay. So here's why I'm presenting it this way. And I want to make sure I make this point clear to you from a pricing standpoint, because I'm asking questions in a way that if the seller answers the question, they believe it. If I tell them something, they don't believe it, right? They don't believe it. If I say, hey, your house isn't, you know, it shouldn't be this or shouldn't be that, they're not going to believe it. But if they say it, so I'm saying, how many bedrooms does it have? 3 bedrooms, just like yours, right? Yeah. 2 baths, just like yours, right? Got a 2-car garage, just like yours, right? Same size, just like yours, right? And they say, yeah. So now they're telling themselves, yeah, this house is just like mine. And this one has been remodeled just like yours. So it's the same as yours. So Michael, you and I have already talked about the fact that your home is better than this one at 380. And now I've said that you're about the same as this one at 449,500. Right? We've had this discussion. So can you go down to the next page, Nicole? Okay, so let's take a look at this home, Michael. This one at 721 Irving is another one for you to look at. This is a comparable.
Okay.
How many bedrooms does it have?
3.
3, just like yours. And how many baths?
2.
2, just like yours. Look at this. It was built in 2022. It's brand new. It's brand new. It's about the same size as yours, the same lot size. It only has a 1-car garage, not a 2-car garage. Do you know where this neighborhood is, Michael, over on Irving?
Yeah, I've been over there before.
Okay, okay. And have you been inside this home?
No.
No, okay. This home, you know, being brand new and having just basically, I mean, it's got everything that a buyer's looking for is better than your home, even with your remodel. How much are they asking?
I can't see the price.
Okay, they're
Scroll
asking,
down a little more.
yeah, they're asking $499. Okay.
I know the contractor who built.
You do know the contractor that built that? Are you speaking as a real estate agent or are you speaking as my seller?
As a seller, he's done work for me on my house before. His name is Kevin Donahoe.
Okay, so you know, and what do you think of his work?
I think it's great work. I'm surprised that some of his builds sit on the market for as long as they do.
Yeah, okay. So, you know, this is how we want to present the comparables to our sellers in order to help them determine the right price for their home. And it's a great way to do it with the comparables, is you take the homes that are on the market active and you compare them to the subject. Are they better? Do they have better curb appeal? Do they have a better location? Do they have a better view? Do they have better quality workmanship? Do they have better quality materials? And you have this conversation with your seller. You're very, very straightforward and honest with them, okay, about, you know, the features and benefits that the comparables have versus theirs and what the recent sales have versus theirs. And you go through the process where you ask them the questions. How many bedrooms does it have? How many bathrooms does it have? You know, have you been in this home? Again, which I remind you, makes you the expert, because 9 out of 10 times they're going to say, no, I haven't been in the home. No, I haven't been in the home. And you can say, yes, I have. That's one of the benefits about previewing property in real time rather than doing it online. Okay, so that you know what the differences are with the homes. Okay. And so after you've gone through your comparables, you know, and I've done this with you, Michael, we had 380, which we said your home is better, and you agreed. We had one at 449. I said that they're about the same, and you probably didn't agree with that. And then we had one at 499 that was brand new, and I explained to you why that one was better than yours, and you understood that. So rather than me telling you what price you should list your home for, I'm going to ask you the question. So now, Michael, now that you've seen these homes, you've seen what your competition is, you've seen what's recently sold, what price do you think that you need to list your home for to create value in the eyes of the buyers in the marketplace? So
I would say closer to the one on that one's it's brand new, but then what about the lot size? How do we factor that? My lot's bigger. This one's only 5,000 square feet.
And how many square footage is yours?
I don't have it in front of me. I believe it was 7 something.
Yeah. Well, I
I'm trying. I was gonna bring up my MLS, so I have it here. But when I go out and do that, my Zoom's acting up. I need to redownload my Zoom. So sorry for that.
yeah, it's okay. Well, I can share with you, Michael. So I'm going to ask you the question again: is what price do you think you should put on your home to create value in the eyes of a buyer?
Well, I want to go with the closest comparable. Like I said, it's not a brand new build. The other property is around the same, but it's listed at, what was it, 480?
Well, the 499 is the one that's brand
I
new.
don't see the
499 is the one that's brand new. 449 is
449.
Yeah. So what price do you think you should list at in order to create value in the eyes of a buyer?
Well, I think because it doesn't have the full upgrades as a 449, when I low fours maybe.
So say that again.
Somewhere in the low fours that doesn't have the upgrades that's 449. It's pretty much similar lot size as baths and garage, but that
Okay.
one has been upgraded. That's 449 over off of us.
Okay. Well, I agree
So
with
I
you.
would say maybe like 490.
Did you say 419?
Yeah.
Okay. I was actually going to suggest a little bit higher. I was going to suggest a little bit higher than that. I was going to suggest that you list at 429.9. Would you be willing to list your home for that price?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be competitive on the market, and it gives a bit of wiggle room for people that if the people see the San Martin home and they realize that mine's not upgraded, but then they can use the savings on their purchase to upgrade the way they want.
Exactly. Perfect. Okay. So let's go back to Nicole. Let's go back to the the gallery view. All right. Yeah. that was sorry about that. That was a little bit rough with some of the technology, particularly here on my part. So I apologize for that. But I wanted to sort of, recap, what is important about the keys about pricing property is to use comparison shopping in the same way that a buyer does. So when you have your comparables, that you're looking at views, you're looking at location, you're looking at the quality of the workmanship, the quality of the materials. I think lot size, makes a little bit of difference. I don't think 1,500 square feet in a lot size makes too much difference, but certainly a half acre versus a 5,000 square foot lot is going to be, comparing apples to apples, that kind of thing, if that makes sense. But the most important part of it is when you are presenting it to your client, that you let them give you the answers. The way that I tried to do with Michael, saying, based on these prices that you've seen, what price do you think would create value in the eyes of a buyer? Go ahead, Jessica.
So I'm curious about STRs. If I have a client or a seller and I'm saying, hey, I think the best price for your property is $750, but he bought it, say, last year for $630, and the market's gone up, but not as high as he would like. He's still not obviously, but he's invested probably a good $80,000 into the remodel minimum. But then his revenue on the STR is about 150 gross. So now that we're looking at it also from a business perspective, where 9 out of 10 of my buyers, and it's probably more like 9.8 out of 10 of my buyers, are looking for an STR, an active STR. How would I incorporate that? Do I incorporate it? What does that look like?
Well, there's pricing a business is a lot different than pricing a house. Does that make sense? I mean, pricing a business is different than pricing a house. So I think I would probably go back to the seller and say, if a buyer does not want to use the home as a vacation rental, how much is that rental income going to create value for the new buyer?
Right. And then at a certain point, it's not going to make sense for him to sell. I mean, this one seller in particular, he's far away. So managing this short-term rental is becoming a little bit more of a headache and a hassle, even though it's good income. So if he doesn't get the price that he wants for the property, he'd rather just not sell until he gets, that number that he has in his mind. But for me, if I pull comparables, just based off of the comparables, that number might not make sense.
Well, okay. So I think in my mind, what the seller wants and what the seller wants doesn't change the value of the house.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't, I mean, they could have, this is the old joke from, years ago training, is that, well, how much do you want for your home? Well, I owe, $380 on the first mortgage. I got a $20,000 second. I owe $13,000 in credit cards. And I've got to pay for my daughter to go to college, and it's $20,000 a year. So I want $650. That doesn't have anything to do with the value of the house. Now, has anybody ever had that conversation with a client? Because I have. Here's what I need to pay off. And so here's what, that does not change the value. So here's another important point that I wanted to make for everybody, is that I want you guys to be experts on determining value, which are all of those things that we talked about. It is, what does the buyer appeal to the curb appeal? What is the quality of the view? What is the quality of the workmanship? And you compare them to all of the things in the market, because you have financial and intellectual acuity. I mean, you're a professional, you know what it is, right? I want you to know that. That's one thing. The second part of it is, how do you convince the client to come to the same conclusion? And that's what using that script where they answer the questions comes in. Go ahead, Becky.
I'm going to piggyback on Jessica's thing and just say that I do think that there's definitely value because they've went through the process of having it inspected, getting it permitted, and everything to be able to do an STR, where a regular house that hasn't been an STR could have some things that need to be done before they can get their permit. So I do see value in that. However, all these people that are doing Airbnbs, that income makes no difference because that person may be running their Airbnb going full force, but the next person may get an unreliable housekeeper, an unreliable maintenance person, and they're just not working it like the other person did. So I that's what I like to tell my sellers in that respect, is that just because you're doing a great job on the Airbnb doesn't mean the next person's going to do that. Or if you put it on maybe Big Bear Vacations where they have thousands of homes, it might not get rented as much as some place that maybe only has a smaller inventory. So it's hard to really push that value, I think, that seller is getting right now onto the buyer. That's just my 2 cents worth.
Well, and I think that's a valid information. The other part is that you can go through your comparables and look at what you're selling, and you're probably going to find that 25 or 30% of those comparable sales are vacation rentals. And so, you know, when somebody says to you, well, I've got $80,000 or $100,000 in vacation rental income that I'm getting, you can go back, if you know your inventory and if you do your homework, you can go back to them and say, well, of these, you know, these 7 comparables that I'm showing you, 4 of them are short-term vacation rentals, and you don't see them raising the price $50,000 or $100,000, do you? Okay, so, you know, so it's, you know, it's important to have, you know, the knowledge of what value is, because you have to be leading your clients and helping them to understand what reality is. And it really comes down to that thing about comparison shopping, which is, you know, this one has a lake view that's better than yours, and they're asking 500. So you're not going to be the same as them. You know, and this one is a little bit smaller than yours. So you know that yours is going to be more valuable than that one. And so you don't necessarily, you know, say, well, this one's $375 a square foot, so that's what your house is worth. You say, this one's at $480, you're better than that one. This one's at $600, you're not that good. And you start bringing those things together to where you get to a number that is in between all of these comparables that they're better than and worse than. Does that make sense? It takes a little bit of work.
Hey, Mark, I have a question for you.
Okay.
We focus a lot on comps. How do you select the comps to compare? Is it on square footage? Is it on bedrooms, bathrooms, lot size, age?
It depends on what the house that you have is. Let's say, I mean, I'm looking for the differentiators. So let me give you an example of what I mean by that. If something was built in 2010, if somebody was building or selling something in 2010, I would not pull comps from 1950. Because that doesn't do me any good. So I would probably bracket it probably 10 years older and 10 years newer, because it sort of brings it in closer. If it's 2,000 square feet, I might go up 10% and go down 10%. So I run from 1,800 square feet up to 2,200 square feet. Because you can have too many comparables. You can also have comparables that, they're just so far. I mean, if I get a house built in 2010 that's 2,000 square feet, and I put 200 square feet lower and 200 square feet higher, and I do a 20-year time frame, in some markets I might pull up 35 comps. right? And that's too many, because I really don't want to have to talk to a seller about that many. So I'll probably pull 6 or 9 of them so that I can paint the picture of where I think they need to be. If that
I
makes
think, yeah, I think that does make sense. Painting the picture where you need that seller's house to be. Hand selecting 6 of 31. That's kind of a, I'm not sure how to characterize that. It's not tainting the water. It's making your comps fit your scenario, I think.
Okay. Well, so with a raise of hands, how many of you honestly feel like you don't know when you look at a home, that you look at a home and you don't know about where it should be? How many of you people don't know where it should be when you look at a home intuitively? You walk into a house and you say, you know, I don't know if this is 200. I don't know if this is 800. I don't know what this is. I mean, how many of you actually feel that way? I don't think
I at
any.
least have some kind of base idea, especially when walking through the property. I know looking around, okay, you've got this, you got this. And then I talk to the seller to see what kind of upgrades. And then I go back and I really kind of dial it out with the comps to figure out exactly what that is, so I can go through that process with the sellers.
Okay. So I think pretty much everybody has a pretty good idea of where, you know, I mean, you know whether it's between 350 and 4 usually, right? I mean, there's usually a pretty wide range there, but you know it's that way. So, you know, to Bill's point, I mean, we are salespeople, and the best definition of selling is influencing thought. And so when we know that something is between 350 and 400, we're not going to pull comps at 250 and at 750. We're going to pull comps that are in that particular range. And then we're going to do the adjustments so that we can paint the picture for the person that shows, you know, hey, you're better than 350, you're not at 400. And then you ask them to self-identify by going through the comparables, making those adjustments. And when they say, you know, based on that, yeah, in order to be realistic, I think we need to be at 375. See, they've said it and they believe it. It's not them saying, you know, I really want 450, and you say, no, there's no way in heck you're going to get that. I mean, that's not a good presentation. The good presentation is when you show them the things and explain to them why their home is not that good. And that's what I did with Michael when we were role playing through those comparables, is that there was a brand new house at 499, and I did not want him up there, and I had to show him that here's a brand new house at 499. That price range does not work for you. And each of us can pull a comp that is better than the subject when the price starts getting too high. Do you guys agree with that? We always can.
Yes.
Tanya?
So in the market that we're currently in now, where things are shifting now into stabilization and even maybe somewhat of a downward trend, when a person prices a home, let's say you priced it in November, and then the person now says, oh, it's February and I want to put my home on the market now. I would say, look, I'm going to reassess the value of what I gave you back in November, even though it's only a few months, to just determine what I believe the price of your home, you know, the market will bear. And is that kind of what people, you know, would you do that on any, at all times? Because even like just, I'm not saying like if it was 4 weeks later, but literally if it's a couple months later.
Well, things can change, you know, I mean, so, you know, typically I think, you know, when a seller comes to me like that and they say, you know, hey, we're thinking about putting our property back on the market. Hey, let me pull the latest comparables to see what kind of changes or adjustments we might need to make, you know, and then I'll come back to them and present exactly the same way I would do in the listing presentation in the very beginning. You know, here's the latest comparables. Yours is better than this one. Yours is not as good as this one, and go through that process of helping them self-identify.
Well, and I was going to say, because sometimes people will just say, okay, so I'm ready now. let's get that agreement. And remember, you said my house was $499, so I'm, let's put it on the market for $499. Do you say, whoa, hold on a moment, let me reassess?
Yeah, well, obviously you have to, obviously, I mean, our job is not to say, well, I told you $499 3 months ago and it's not $499 now, but let's try it anyway. We probably need to have that conversation with them.
And another question I have, sorry, full of them today, is, so I just went on a listing appointment on Sunday, and my seller wanted me to go past one of her other houses, so I did. And she's sending me all of these comparables of homes that are listed. And I told her, I said, yes, these are great comparable properties, but let's look and see the days on market. They've been sitting on the market 100+ days. Do you really want to use this to comp your property out so that your property may also sit on the market 100+ days? Or do you want to price it to sell? And so I'm trying to educate my sellers in that sense too, where, they're looking on Zillow and doing all of their research, or they're looking at homes that sold back in September, instead of homes that sold, in January, where the market has obviously taken a completely different path than what we were doing in September. And so I'm really trying to educate my sellers in that sense. But it is kind of difficult to know if I'm pricing it right, because I feel like the market still, it feels like it's starting to gain some kind of consistency, but it's still really hard to project where it's going. And so trying to be, I think, proactive to get it in that sweet spot where it's not too high and we're not chasing the market by doing multiple price reductions. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I, honestly, Jess, I don't have an answer for you. Okay. After 38 years, I don't have, the answer where I can say that I'm 100% right. I'm probably right 65, 70% of the time. And other times I'm not. I mean, I tell sellers a lot of times, is I'm going to give you my honest opinion based on what we know. And I'm going to make my suggestion about what I would do if it were my home, knowing what I would do. But I've been wrong before. Okay. I mean, and that's being honest, because we all have been wrong before. Okay. The other thing I would say, before we wrap up, is that when you say that you're going to educate your clients, do it with questions. Do it with questions. So the scenario that you were talking about there, about people bringing you comparables, I would say, have you been in any of these homes? No. Okay. Do you know how long they've been on the market? No. Or let's look. Oh, this one's been 108 days. That one's been 162 days. This sold back in September. That's great. Do you think that the market has changed since September?
I think it takes a lot of practice learning how to basically change that mindset. Like for me personally, to where it is, asking questions, because I just want to be like, nope, I know, I want to just put my information directly in their head and say, this is, I'm an expert. But really learning, I think that's an art, learning to put it in question form so that they could come up with it. Because I know, I mean, even when I was on your team years ago, I remember you saying to ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. And so even though I know that's what I'm supposed to do, it's hard sometimes when you're in the moment. It's,
it's hard for all of us. And so the underlying principle to that in a sales situation is that if you say it, the people are going to question it. And if they say it, they're going to believe it. So if I say your house is worth 400, they're going to be, I'm not so sure. But if I ask them a series of questions and I say, well, based on all the things that I've shown you, what do you think your home is worth? And they say it's worth 400, they will believe it. And that is the key to getting people to price the property appropriately, is asking them the questions that will get them to give you the right answer. If you tell them the right answer, they're going to question it. If they give you that answer, it's going to be correct. The beautiful close at the end, for your scenario, Jess, is after you've demonstrated that these things have been on the market for 120, 150 days, and the market has changed, is say, when we price your property, are you willing to price it to sit, or do you want to price it to sell? That's a question. Now, I mean, she's going to sound really foolish if she says, well, I want to price it to sit. They're not going to do that, right? They're not going to answer it that way. Okay. So I want to apologize because I feel like there's a lot of information that we talked about today that really didn't come together. So I want to wrap it up really quickly, is that price per square foot is not value. Value is the features and benefits. Things like curb appeal, things like accessibility, things like quality of workmanship, things like quality of materials. Those things are what create value. And then the buyers are going to make their decisions by comparison shopping. So you want to take those particular things that create value and go to the comps and start talking about the differences and making adjustments and making value adjustments based on the comparables versus the home that you're looking at, if that makes sense. So here's one way to close buyers on that. So the buyer comes to you and says, I really like this house on Craig's Lane. They're asking $390,000, but I want to offer $320 or $350 because I think the market's going to go down. And you show them the comparables and they go, well, look, this one over here that closed, this one closed at $330. So I only want to pay $330 for this house. You do exactly the same thing with the buyer to get them to bring their offer up as you do with the seller to bring their overpriced listing down. Is you take the comparable and you say, okay, remember when we were out looking at properties and we saw that house that had the single pane windows? This comp at $330 has single pane windows. And this comp has a driveway that you could, shoot a rocket ship off. It's so steep. And you start comparing the features and benefits and the value between the homes that, the home that they want to buy at $390, and you upsell them on what the true value is by showing them why the lower comp they're trying to justify it with is not as valuable as the house they want to buy. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions before we finish up?
Yeah, Mark,
Yes.
I have a question. On the slides with the literature and the key points from presentation, is there any way that you can tell those out to me?
Yes. Nicole has that and she will send it out to the group after we're done.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you all for coming.
Hey, Mark, I've got a comment.
Okay.
I was looking to get a fine tuning on what I thought I knew, and I'm walking away with 4 or 5 good nuggets. Thank you.
Can you tell me what those 4 or 5 nuggets are?
Yeah, number one is I have been leading with dollars per square foot. I see the error of my ways. The other is I think I want to conjure up a checklist using those factors that you talked about to compare the comps. I'm okay with selecting comps, presenting the differences there, but I haven't sought the written appraisal of a buyer in evaluating those homes on a 1 to 10 basis. I'm going to try to come up with something like that that I can give to the buyer as we're seeing each of the 3 or 4 homes.
Good.
Let's see here. That really is the 2 nuggets that I picked up. A couple of other ones are just really fine tuning over.
Perfect. Well, I'm glad this is the most people that we've had show up for a class. So, well, thank you all for coming. Obviously, this is an important topic, so maybe we'll talk about it again more in the future and try and refine it. And because, all the things that we do, and Bill said it is, I'm here to refine what I'm doing. we're going to continue to refine our skills as we go forward. And as the market changes, we'll come up with new and better things to say and better ways to serve our clients. So thank you guys all for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Mark just said